if you have a 16-year-old and you say, do you know what, I'm not going to give you so much pocket money, I want you to go out to work. And then the OBR comes and does an impact assessment and says, your child is going to be worse off. Well, they're going to be worse off if they don't go and get themselves a Saturday job. But if they do go and get themselves a Saturday job, they'll probably be better off and they probably might enjoy it as well. Now, no, that's not the right analogy, but there are a lot of people who have a disability but who are desperate to work.
Within weeks, you could see the fiscal space that you have eroded. That will necessarily start a conversation about how you, again, return to a position where the rules are going to be met, and that will return us to a conversation about tax rises. The speculation, Chancellor, has already started. Do you recognise, because you've only left us with a small amount of fiscal space, that there will be a conversation about tax rises and that there will be a cost to that conversation? People may be deciding actually to put off investments, to put off spending, because they are worried about the potential tax rises that could come in the autumn.
We wiped the slate clean on the fiscal mismanagement and the fiscal fiction of the previous government last autumn, and we did have to introduce a number of tax measures then. But I was determined yesterday that we continue to meet the fiscal rules without further increasing the tax burden, and that's what I was able to achieve yesterday.
Just come back to the headline numbers. These are your government's numbers. 250,000 people could be pushed into poverty. Can you rule out that none of those, despite your government's own numbers, will be pushed into poverty?
I am absolutely certain that our reforms, instead of putting people into poverty, are going to get people into work. And we know that if you move from welfare into work, you are much less likely to be in poverty. That is our ambition, making people better off, not making people worse off. And also the welfare state will always be there for people who genuinely need it. And when people come up for their reassessments for personal independence payments, we want them to be seen by a trained assessor. Before the pandemic, people were seen face-to-face 7 times out of 10 for those assessments. It's now 1 out of 10. I want people with sickness and disability challenges to see a face-to-face trained assessor so that they get the support that they need, whether that support is with payments from the state or, actually most significantly, support to get back into work and to stay in work.
On your own impact assessments, you say that 250,000 people will be put in relative poverty by 2029, 50,000 of those children. Those are your own figures.
Well, Charlie, those figures are based on no changes in terms of people going back into work. And we know that the £1 billion that we put in yesterday to personalised, tailored support to support people back into work will make a difference. So we're going to work with the Office of Budget Responsibility, the official forecaster, over the summer, ahead of the budget in the autumn, to show how those plans can make a difference.
It's got to be addressed, hasn't it? We're talking to a former Home Affairs Minister this morning who said you're the weakest link in Cabinet. How do you change that?
Well, the Cabinet are working together on our plan for change. I'm tasked with growing the economy, and the OBR forecast that the economy will be bigger in this Parliament than it previously would have been. But the changes we've made to secure our public finances also mean record investment going into our NHS, which has enabled us to bring down waiting lists. The money that's going into schools is enabling us to roll out free breakfast clubs in all primary schools. We've found £2.2 billion for defence next year, taking defence spending to 2.5% of GDP, something the Conservatives promised but never delivered. So by securing our public finances, by making some of those difficult decisions on tax, welfare and on spending, we are able to invest in the things that I believe are our nation's priorities and will
make choices. You didn't have to make these cuts. You didn't have to cut the winter fuel allowance. You could have made other choices. You could have, for example, taxed people with £10 million of assets 2%. That would have brought in billions of pounds a year, yet you chose to penalise poorer people.
Well, in the budget last year, we raised taxes to the tune of £40 billion. That was primarily on the wealthiest and also asking businesses to pay more through national insurance. But we got rid of the non-dom status. So if you make your home in Britain, you'll pay your taxes here. Put VAT on private schools.
Well, that's backfired, hasn't it?
What has?
The VAT on private schools, that's actually costing you money,
No, it's
according
not.
to the BBC today.
Oh, no. The Office for Budget Responsibility and the Institute of Fiscal Studies say that it's bringing in more money than they originally anticipated. So those changes, increasing capital gains tax and tightening up the inheritance tax rules, do mean that the wealthiest are paying more into the tax system.
Chancellor, is there anything you would be prepared to give up, to do, to make the White House maybe treat the UK in a different way? We were just discussing around the table with Lizzie the possibility of maybe scrapping the digital services tax. Would that be on the table? Are there other levers you could potentially pull? Can you take us inside the room and give us an idea of what is being discussed and what is on the table at this point to maybe see the UK get a different treatment to the one we are potentially going to see meted out to the European Union?
Well, at the moment, there are tariffs on the flow of some goods between the UK and the US, and those tariffs work both ways. I would like to see tariffs between countries fall. So, of course, we're having those conversations. Tax policy is one for national governments to decide, and we'll continue those conversations with the US.